Breaking Bad's Confessions is no doubt one of the absolute finest episodes that the series has to offer, swinging from total shock and drama to heart-wrenching sadness with finesse and mastery. And it is during one of its highlight scenes that we get a defining moment for the series. As pressure continues to ramp up on Walt following Hank learning the truth about Heisenberg, he ultimately concludes that he has to deal with all of the loose ends that could result in his arrest. And naturally, that includes the partner that he has been cooking with for roughly a year. In this scene, with Saul anxiously teetering in the background, Walt begins spinning this narrative centered around the idea of it being such a nice thought for Jesse to just get away from all of this. Away from Albuquerque, away from the business, away from Walter. And notably, this is an idea that he had been totally against in the not-too-distant past as he constantly tried to persuade Jesse to stay in the game. And everyone present for this conversation understands the subtext here. Walt does not want Jesse to get out of Dodge solely because he truly wants the best for him. He primarily wants him gone because he wants the best for himself. Jesse is a loose end that could lead to his conviction, and as a result, he needs him to leave. Forever.
Maybe it's time for you to just leave all of this behind. Just get out of town. Don't look back. Yeah, I know. Sounds a little extreme. Maybe it's exactly what you need. You know, I really think that would be good for you. Clean slate.
It's so easy to see that this is a clear attempt at trying to control Jesse, and while it may have worked to stunning effect in the past, Walt's magic dust had worn off, and Jesse saw right through it this time.
Would you just, for once, stop working me?
Jesse, I am not working you.
Yes. Yes, you are. All right, just drop the whole concerned dad thing and tell me the truth. I mean, you're acting like me leaving town is all about me and turning over a new leaf, but it's really about you. Just ask me for a favor. Just tell me you don't give a shit about me, and it's either this or you'll kill me the same way you killed Mike.
It's such a cathartic climax for so many reasons. Jesse finally expressing his immense pain, finally catching on to exactly who and what this man is, and more than anything, simply conveying his wish for Walter to just tell him the truth. But I consider Walter's wordless reply to be the biggest moment out of all of this. A simple hug, one that is initially forced upon Jesse that gradually becomes more and more consensual. This is one of the most complex and defining moments of Breaking Bad, and as great a summation of Walt and Jesse's relationship as anything. There are many reasons behind Walt's hug, and many reasons for Jesse's reaction to it, and in my opinion, it isn't a case of it being one thing or another as much as it is a combination of all of those factors and more. The first thing to get out of the way here is that I 100% believe that this hug was at least partly born out of genuine care. I think that there was true affection for Jesse behind this, and you may or may not agree with me on this given your interpretation of the type of person Walt is with regards to this relationship. But in a series that contains so many aspects that can be argued as up for debate, it is clear as day to me that Walt grew to care for Jesse quite quickly and never stopped caring until he took his last breath, no matter how much that care was buried underneath frustration, hatred, pride, power lust, and love for his family. He avenged Jesse against Tuco, he tried to save him from himself and prevent him from going deeper into drugs, he described Jesse as a nephew to Jane's dad while venting about him, he tried to patch things up, he constantly protected him from Gus, he risked his and his family's lives to save Jesse from thugs, and more. Of course, I'm not trying to argue that any of this makes him a good person. I'm just providing evidence of the fact that he cared for Jesse. And this is just a short bullet point list of things he's done for him, but all you really need to do is see their prolonged interactions, and it's really clear. It is absolute fact that Walter used and manipulated Jesse for devious, selfish, and at times malevolent ends. But that does not mean that he didn't care for him very deeply. The two aspects can coexist, and in all honesty, he probably loved him like a son, with Jesse tragically overtaking Walter Jr. in his mind at times.
That's good, Jesse.
And so I cannot look at this hug, the mood of the scene, and the emotions portrayed by Bryan Cranston and conclude that this isn't sincere on some level. It's partly a display of care for Jesse, perhaps of sadness and lamentation that he's causing him such pain. Although if that is the case, obviously a simple hug would not even begin to make up for it even a little bit. But also, following this train of thought, it's a gesture of gratitude and relief due to Jesse understanding the situation and what needs to be done. Jesse is absolutely correct. Walter needs him gone. And as much as part of Walter still cares for Jesse, he cares more for himself and his family, and that was what was at stake here. Walt was dreading the possibility of having to choose between Jesse and that, because Jesse was always going to be the loser there and he would have hated to kill him. But if it came to it, he would have. So Walt's relief is because Jesse understood the gravity of this situation and what needed to be done to ensure his own safety. Obviously, this is twisted in itself and doesn't redeem Walt in any way, but it informs us of where his head is at and helps us to better understand how layered he is. Yet, of course, this is Heisenberg we're talking about, so I'm sure there is some element of manipulation and a play here as well, with his show of care also working as a way to express his supposed compassion and affection for Jesse to try to convince him that it is primarily because he is thinking of his benefit. And in this way, the hug can be viewed as multifaceted, cynical and self-serving, but also genuine and caring in its own way. Very characteristic of the man himself.
I think part of it is, with most of what we do with Walt, it's in a sense he's manipulating, but in a sense he believes these things are right. He believes he is helping Jesse. And so in his head, even though Jesse's absolutely right, he needs him to leave because of Walt's own issues, he does think, this is good for him and I'm going to help him out. Like there's a sort of benevolent denial in his actions. Yeah.
To piggyback on to what was stated by the writers in the commentary for this episode, while I did say earlier that Walt's ideas for Jesse to move away and be free from all of this are primarily for himself, I don't believe that it is wholly for himself, and I do think a part of him would be happy to see Jesse happy. But that part is dwarfed by his own self-interest, and that is the lasting impression he makes on the people around him and the story. And the significance of this scene goes past even all of that. This isn't just wordless gratitude because of Jesse understanding him. It isn't just relief that he wouldn't have to bring harm to his former partner. It is the most honest Walter has been to Jesse in who knows how long. His confession to Skylar and Felina about the true nature of why he did the things he did is rightfully lauded as one of the emotional highs and most gratifying scenes in the series for how he finally lays the truth of his ego and power lust bare. But this scene is an earlier and more subtle example of Walt finally stopping his habit of trying to solve everything with falsehoods and lies. He doesn't straight out admit it when Jesse accuses him, but a lack of a denial is essentially an admittance in itself when it comes to Walter. He admits here to Jesse through not denying any of what he says that he does need Jesse gone, that he has been manipulating him, and that he did kill Mike. It's a gigantic moment in the story for all of these reasons, and there are so many elements at play here, some that I'm sure have passed me by, but I think that Jesse saw through Walt and realized all of it, and his only response was to cry. His reaction here is just as important as the hug itself to me for what it means from Jesse's side of the relationship, and what it says about all of this. Jesse slowly but surely breaks down and gives in to the embrace. He doesn't reciprocate physically and put his arms around Walt, but you can just see him gradually abandoning the anger and giving in to the sadness as he cries into Walt's chest. And from this, it's easy to see what we already knew, that just as Walt cares for him, he too cares for Walt, even now. He likely hates himself for feeling this way and seeking comfort in him, but he just can't help it after what they've been through. Walt is someone that simultaneously broke him down and acted as a pillar of support. He needs a shoulder to cry on here, and the only one in his life who he feels he can turn to is the man who has hurt him so much and is now telling him that he needs to leave or die. And it's desperately sad. Of course, later in the episode, Jesse would realize that Walt poisoned Brock, which basically set him loose and naturally put him on a path of no return. But his conflicting care and hate for the man prior to that is such a characteristic moment of their dynamic.
I have never been more alone. I have nothing. No one. All right, it's all gone. Get it?
Earlier on in the series, after being beat up by Hank, Jesse goes on this rampage stating that his life has turned to shit ever since he teamed up with Walt. And he's right. He was carefree before, and now he's lost one of his best friends and a potential future partner. He's been beaten close to death by both drug lords and DEA agents alike, and his mental state has only gone from bad to worse. His life has been tumultuous. And one of the things that stings most is this inferiority he feels, that he's never been properly respected by Walt despite putting the work in. He's made tons of mistakes, some of them very bad, but someone like Jesse needs warmth, guidance, and acknowledgement, and Walt was only ever able to provide that in small doses that were overpowered by the negatives and counteracted by coldness. But those small doses did leave an impact, and it wasn't all bad. And the key moment to illustrate this occurs very soon after that same outburst.
Your meth is good, Jesse. As good as mine.
Validation, acknowledgement of hard work and skill, essentially stating through this that he is the culmination of everything Walt has taught him. Walt helped Jesse mature into a man with a clear sense of responsibility and direction, and a lot of that was sadly due to Walt's destructive path, resulting in Jesse being forced to confront what he wants out of life due to losing so much. But Walt also taught him things. How to be diligent, how to be professional, how to grow up. Yes, Jesse before and after Walt is like night and day in terms of happiness and overall well-being. But it's also a huge contrast in terms of a clear focus on what he wants out of his time on Earth, and I don't think Jesse can let go of that. Through learning how to cook meth with Walt, Jesse ironically learned how much this business just wasn't for him at all. He discovered the type of life he wanted to live, and formed an almost sacred bond that neither he nor Walt would ever be able to sever, for better or for worse. Now, of course, this is not me trying to say that this means that it was worth it, but the presence of overwhelming bad does not totally eliminate all of the good, or all of the care, especially for the characters themselves, and that's all that I'm saying. It was not all 100% awful. Jesse did not only ever experience bad things from Walt, and Walt wasn't always disappointed by Jesse. They shared many great and productive memories that could never be totally erased even after so much pain. Their relationship was never easy to define, and there were always so many dimensions to it, so at times it's difficult for them to fully comprehend how they feel about one another. And so with the dust cleared, they can't fully hate each other with every fiber of their being. And it's important to note that Jesse is the one who is most entitled to hate for sure, but I'm just speaking about their relationship holistically. There were times when they looked like sworn enemies, but that was in the most heated moments, and with all said and done, they can't ignore everything they've gone through. It is far from black and white. By the end, there may be mostly hate there, but there is also camaraderie and something resembling a mentor-student or a father-son relationship. Gone bad, but not forgotten. Walt is a sociopathic manipulator who did Jesse dirty in so many ways and did many unspeakable things that outshone the positives, but we can't ever forget how intensely he tried to set Jesse straight from a relationship with a woman and drugs that was clearly going to go down badly for him. How desperately he tried to save Jesse from Gus and his own destructive tendencies. How he literally rescued Jesse from a very likely death and his captivity by the end. Although honestly, rescuing him from captivity doesn't deserve much praise because it's the least he could have done. And from the other side, Jesse hated Walt for all of the evil things he did, but after everything that they went through together, he can't really find the motivation to look at him with complete loathing. Time passed, and both men and the nature of their relationship were in a constant state of flux, but the scattered scenes we see throughout show that the care remained, hidden and underlying, but very much present through all. It's such a human, complex, and raw relationship that is impossible to sum up with words, and so this very telling and conflicting final look between the two was always going to be the most appropriate way to sum it up. Many thanks for watching.
There's so much water under the bridge emotionally between these two characters. They've been through so much. They've been ready to kill each other. Yeah. They've had the absolute depths of hatred and anger toward one another.
And pretty big highs as well. You know, joy and celebration and accomplishment and hellaciousness, man.
You want to cook crystal meth? You and me.
That's right.